The crack
It's
of a
all right.
rifle
You're
shot
safe
split the
now.
silence of the Arizona wilderness, followed by the metallic snap of the trap and a sharp cry of pain. A flock of ravens exploded into the sky as the echoes died away across the pine-covered ridge. "I told you she'd come," a man's voice growled from the shadows. "Indians are predictable when it comes to blood." "Should we grab her now?" asked another voice. "No. Let's see who else shows up. Reed wants them all." Jake Sullivan froze mid-step, his Winchester 73 rifle instantly at his shoulder. Those voices were less than 50 yards away. Someone had deliberately set one of his traps as bait and caught something. Or someone. He moved like a ghost through the underbrush, 15 years as a cavalry scout during the Civil War, making him nearly invisible among the dappled shadows. He spotted her first, a Navajo woman caught in a steel trap, blood already soaking through her moccasin. Then he saw them, two men hidden among the rocks, rifles ready. They were waiting for someone else to arrive. The woman was bait in a larger trap. Jake had a split second to decide. He aimed carefully and fired twice in rapid succession. The first shot sent a hunter's hat flying. The second splintered rock inches from the second man's head. "Clear out!" Jake shouted. "Next shots go through bone." The men scrambled away, firing wildly as they retreated. Jake circled toward the woman, who had pulled a knife from her belt. "Stay back," she warned, her English accented but clear. Her dark eyes blazed with pain and defiance. Jake lowered his rifle slowly and raised his empty hand. "That was my trap once," he said evenly. "But those men reset it for you. They're gone for now, but they'll be back with more guns." The woman's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Why would you help? Your people never helped mine." Jake knelt slowly, out of knife range. "Lady, I've got no love for ambushes or men who hunt people. Now you want out of that trap before they return, or would you rather bleed until they come back to collect you?" For several tense moments, they remained locked in silent assessment. Finally, she lowered the blade a fraction. "You try anything," she warned, "and I cut your throat before I die." A ghost of a smile touched Jake's lips. "Fair enough." Jake worked quickly on the trap mechanism while staying alert to the sounds of the forest. "What's your name?" he asked. The woman hesitated. "Najoni." "Jake Sullivan." The trap sprang open with a metallic clank, and Najoni stifled a cry as blood flowed from the deep punctures. Jake tore a strip from his shirt and bound the wound. "Can you walk?" She tested her weight and winced. "Not far. Not fast. My cabin's a mile north. I've got supplies to treat that wound properly." He picked up his rifle and scanned the tree line. "Those men were waiting for someone to come looking for you." "Who were they expecting?" Najoni studied him, calculating how much to reveal. "My brother, and others from my band." Jake nodded. "Bounty hunters?" "Worse," she replied. "They work for Clayton Reed." The name hung in the air like gun smoke. Everyone in the territory knew Reed, former Border Patrol turned bounty hunter, with a reputation for bringing in hostile natives, dead or alive. What few people knew was that many of his captures were based on fabricated charges. As they began the difficult trek to his cabin, Jake's mind drifted back to the night that had set him on this solitary path. After the war, he'd taken a job with the Barton Ranch outside Tucson. His trouble began when he caught the ranch foreman, Davis, whipping a young Mexican boy. The confrontation left Davis with a broken jaw and Jake on the run. That night, Davis and 5 others dragged him from his bunk, beat him senseless, and strung a rope over a cottonwood branch. Jake would have died if not for old Manuel, the Mexican cook who cut him down and helped him escape. As Jake fled north into the wilderness, Davis's parting words haunted him. "You're dead the moment you show your face in civilized country again." As they approached his small cabin, Jake motioned for Najoni to stop. Fresh horse tracks led toward the cabin, 4 sets made within the past few hours. Someone's been here, he muttered, his hand tightening on his rifle. Jake knelt to examine the tracks more closely. One of them's Davis, he said grimly, foreman who tried to hang me 5 years ago. Inside the cabin, destruction greeted him. His few possessions had been ransacked, cupboards emptied, his bedding slashed. The small photograph of Sarah, the woman he'd almost married before fever took her, lay shattered on the floor. On the table lay a single shell casing and a folded note. Sullivan, Reed wants to talk. Silver Peak, 3 days. Come alone or we find you. P.S. Your Indian friends won't be around to help. When he returned to Nijoni, she said, Reed has my brother, Ashki. He took him and 6 others from our camp 2 weeks ago. Said they raided a settlement. Her eyes flashed. It was a lie. Ashki was with me when the raid happened. Why would Reed want your brother specifically? Nijoni's face hardened. Because Ashki knows the old silver mine tunnels that connect to Silver Peak. The tunnels our ancestors dug centuries ago. Jake's eyes widened. Reed's not just collecting bounties, is he? He's looking for new veins to mine. And slaves to mine them, she added bitterly. 50 Navajo men have disappeared in 3 months. None return. As Jake cleaned Nijoni's wound in the cabin, he noticed a necklace hanging from her neck. A small silver pendant with intricate engravings. That's old Spanish silver work, he remarked. Family heirloom. Nijoni's hand went to the pendant. It opens the door to the ancient tunnels. Only the keeper of the silver paths wears this. It was my father's, now mine. That's why Reed wants your brother. To find you. She nodded grimly. And why I was tracking Ashki when your trap caught me. As night fell, Jake began gathering supplies. We leave at first light. Silver Peak is 3 days hard ride north. If we're going to get your brother out, we'll need help. My people will not fight Reed, she said resignedly. Too many have died already. Not thinking of your people, Jake replied, checking his ammunition. There's a settlement a day's ride east of here. Man named Washington runs it. Former slave who built a life out here after the war. He hates men like Reed about as much as I do. For the first time, a flicker of hope showed in Nijoni's eyes. Why are you doing this? This is not your fight. Jake was silent for a long moment. Finally, he picked up the broken frame containing Sarah's photograph, gently removing the image from the shattered glass. 5 years ago, I walked away when I should have fought, he said quietly. Let men like Davis and Reed have their way, because it was easier than standing against them. Lost something of myself that night. He tucked the photograph into his shirt pocket. Some debts you pay to the living, some you pay to the dead, some you pay to yourself. Dawn had barely broken when Jake detected movement outside. He was instantly alert, rifle in hand, motioning for Nijoni to stay silent. 3 riders were approaching, spreading out to surround the cabin. Back door, Jake whispered. Now. They slipped out just as the first shot splintered the front door. Jake helped Nijoni onto the spare horse, then mounted his own. They rode hard into the dense forest as bullets whined past them. By midday, they had put several miles between themselves and the cabin. As they paused to rest by a small stream, Jake noticed Nijoni studying him. The man who tried to hang you, she said. You let him live. Why? Jake's face hardened. Wasn't my choice. The rope broke. And now? He checked his rifle methodically. Different times call for different mercies. They rode until dusk, finally reaching a rocky overlook where Jake felt safe enough to make camp. As they sat by a small, smokeless fire, he outlined his plan, explaining Reed's connections to the territorial government and the army. Yet you still want to fight him. It wasn't a question, but there was something new in Nijoni's voice. Respect. Some fights choose you, Jake replied simply. A sound in the darkness jolted Jake from his thoughts. He raised his rifle, scanning the perimeter. Behind you, came a calm voice. Jake spun to find a rifle barrel pointed at his chest. The man holding it was tall and lean, with dark skin and the bearing of one who had survived much. "Sullivan," the man said, lowering his rifle slightly. "Heard you might be headed our way." Jake exhaled slowly. "Washington, your scouts have gotten better." Elijah Washington's stern face relaxed into a brief smile. "Had to. Too many of Reed's men prowling these days." The settlement was larger than Jake had expected. 20 cabins arranged around a central meeting hall, with people of various backgrounds moving about with purpose, all with the alertness of those accustomed to watching horizons. And inside the meeting hall, maps of the territory covered one wall, with notes pinned alongside them. Another wall held weapons, rifles, shotguns, even a few cavalry sabers. "Reed's operation has grown," Washington explained. "Started with just bounty hunting. Now he controls half the territory through fear, and the other half through money and politics." Nijoni hesitantly shared the secrets of the ancient silver tunnels, opening her pendant to reveal a small map etched into the silver. "My brother Ashki is keeper of the western paths. I keep the eastern. With these tunnels, Reed could bypass the government inspectors, Jake realized. Mine silver that never appears on official records. And work men to death without witnesses," Washington added grimly. Jake stood and moved to the maps on the wall. "How many men can you spare?" Washington considered. 10 who can fight well. Maybe 5 more who can handle a rifle if needed." "Against Reed's small army?" Nijoni asked skeptically. "Numbers aren't everything," Jake replied, studying the map of Silver Peak. "I've faced worse odds." "Not alone you haven't," came a new voice from the doorway. Jake turned to see a familiar face. Samuel Washington, Elijah's son. They'd fought together briefly during the last year of the war, when the Union Army finally allowed black soldiers to serve in combat roles. "Samuel," Jake nodded, "still rushing into fights you can't win?" The younger Washington grinned. "Still following you into them, seems like." As the night progressed, they developed their strategy. Samuel would create a distraction at the silver shipment Reed was guarding, while Jake, Nijoni, and Washington would approach the mine through the treacherous Devil's Canyon, a sacred path the superstitious guards wouldn't watch. The journey through Devil's Canyon was arduous. By the time they emerged, the sun was already low in the western sky. Silver Peak lay before them, a sprawling complex carved into the mountainside. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, and a high fence surrounded the compound. Through his field glasses, Jake spotted movement at the main entrance, several riders leaving in haste. "Samuel's distraction is working," he observed. "They're pulling men away." "There," Nijoni pointed to a fenced area separate from the main compound. "Worker pens." Jake could make out figures being herded toward the mine entrance by armed overseers. "We wait until full dark," Jake decided. "Then Nijoni leads us to the hidden entrance." As darkness fell, they moved down the slope, using the shadows for cover. Nijoni led them to a seemingly solid rock face, inserted her pendant into a small crevice, and a section of the wall swung inward. "This will take us beneath the mine." The passage was cramped and dark. After about 20 minutes, they reached a junction where the ancient tunnel met a newer shaft. Mining equipment lay scattered about, and electric lights cast harsh shadows. They climbed cautiously, freezing when they overheard guards talking. "Reed himself went to guard the shipment," one guard said. "Left Davis in charge here." Jake's jaw tightened at the mention of Davis. Perhaps fate was offering him a chance to settle old debts. They reached the upper level and found themselves in a maintenance tunnel behind the worker barracks. Through gaps in the wooden walls, they could see dozens of men lying on crude pallets. Most appeared to be Navajo, though Jake spotted some Chinese workers as well. Nijoni led them to a section where a single guard stood outside a reinforced door. Jake dispatched him silently, and Nijoni slipped inside. Moments later, she returned with a gaunt man whose resemblance to her was unmistakable despite his condition. The three-line scar across his right cheek confirmed his identity. Ashkai, she whispered, embracing him briefly. They quickly freed 4 other prisoners who had refused to reveal the tunnel locations. When Washington proposed escaping with just these few, Nizoni insisted on collapsing the mine to free everyone and end Reed's operation. The ancient tunnels have supported pillars, she explained. Remove them, and the new mine tunnels collapse, Jake finished. It would destroy Reed's operation. Ashkey offered to show them where to place explosives, having mapped the connections between old and new tunnels during his captivity. As Washington led the freed prisoners back toward the hidden entrance, Jake, Nizoni, and Ashkey headed deeper into the mine. They had just set the final charge when a voice called out behind them. Well, well, Sullivan, after all these years. Jake turned slowly to find Davis standing 20 feet away, a revolver aimed at his chest. Behind him were 3 armed guards. Davis, Jake acknowledged, still doing dirty work for men bigger than you? The foreman's face twisted with hate. Big enough to hang you properly this time. Reed's not here, Jake replied, chasing ghosts out on the trail while his real problems are right under his nose. Davis's smile was ugly. He'll be sorry he missed the show. He cocked the revolver. Drop the guns, slow. Jake complied, letting his rifle slide to the ground. As he did, he caught Nizoni's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod toward the fuse they just set. You won't make it out of here, Davis, Jake said calmly. Not with what we've done, Davis laughed. What? Set some charges. My men already found 2 of them. Not all of them, Jake replied, and not the one burning right now. Davis's head snapped toward the support pillar, where a barely visible spark was traveling up the fuse. In that moment of distraction, Jake moved, tackling Davis against the tunnel wall. The fight was brutal and swift. Jake slammed Davis's gun hand against the wall until the weapon clattered to the ground, then delivered a crushing blow to the man's jaw. 5 years of waiting, of nightmares where the rope tightened around his neck, fueled each strike. The fuse, Ashkey reminded them urgently. Let it burn, Jake said, retrieving his rifle. But we need to move, now. They raced through the tunnels, Ashkey leading them along a direct path to the surface. Behind them, explosions shook the mine. They emerged from a ventilation shaft just as the main collapse began. In the chaos, they slipped away toward the ridge where Washington and his men had mounted a frontal assault on the main gate as a distraction. 3 days later, Jake and Nizoni rode into the town of Redemption. Through an old friend at the telegraph office, they learned that Reed had put out a $500 bounty on them, and worse, had called in the army to pacify Indian unrest near Silver Peak. Military wire came through yesterday, Simmons explained. Army's sending a detachment of 40 men. They'll reach Silver Peak tomorrow. If Reed convinced the army that the Navajo were hostile, dozens of innocent people could die. There might be a way, Simmons offered. Judge Parker's in town. Federal Circuit judge. Man with a reputation for hanging criminals and Reed's kind of corruption. Even better, Parker was already investigating Reed in connection with 2 missing federal marshals. They managed to reach Parker's hotel room despite Reed and his men watching the building. The judge quickly drafted a federal writ authorizing Reed's immediate arrest. Captain Hollister is a by-the-book officer, Parker explained. Present this writ to him before he reaches Silver Peak, and he'll be legally bound to suspend his current orders pending investigation. They caught up to Hollister's company shortly after daybreak. The captain was skeptical but duty-bound to honor the federal writ. He dispatched scouts to verify their claims. Your account appears to be accurate, Hollister admitted when the scouts returned. My men observed Reed forcing Navajo families from their homes. They're being herded toward a canyon, not as hostiles but as prisoners. Within the hour, Jake and Nizoni were riding with Lieutenant Chambers and 20 soldiers toward the Navajo settlements. They reached the canyon where Reed had trapped nearly 40 Navajo families, preparing to execute those who wouldn't reveal the tunnel locations. Jake and Najoni circled to a position overlooking Reed's location, while Chambers approached openly under a flag of truce to create a distraction. Just as one of Reed's men was about to execute a kneeling Navajo man, Chambers and his soldiers appeared at the canyon entrance. Reed, enraged, pointed his pistol at a Navajo woman. "One more step and I start shooting." Jake and Najoni pushed a boulder from their ledge, missing Reed but sending him sprawling. His pistol discharged harmlessly as Chambers' men rushed forward to secure Reed's gunman. Jake scrambled down to confront Reed, who was struggling to his feet. "Sullivan," Reed spat, "always interfering in matters that don't concern you." "Slavery concerns everyone," Jake replied evenly, his rifle trained on Reed. "Murder too. It's over." Reed's hand moved suddenly to his boot, drawing a hidden derringer. "Not while I breathe." The shot came not from Jake's rifle, but from Najoni's pistol. Reed staggered, looking down in shock at the spreading stain on his chest, then back at Najoni. "An Indian," he whispered in disbelief. "Killed by an Indian." He collapsed slowly, his eyes glazing. Lieutenant Chambers approached, surveying the scene. "Self-defense," he noted for the record. "Multiple witnesses." As Reed's men were disarmed and the Navajo families freed, Jake found himself standing apart, watching the sunrise. A chapter that had begun 5 years ago with a lynch mob was ending in the clear light of dawn. Nijoni joined him, her face solemn but unburdened. "It is finished," she said simply. Jake nodded. "This part at least." "And what comes next?" she asked. He looked toward the horizon, where the rugged landscape stretched endlessly beneath the vast Arizona sky. "Rebuilding. For your people. For Washington's settlement. For all of us." "Together?" There was a question in her voice, tentative yet hopeful. Jake thought of the broken photograph of Sarah he still carried, of the ghost that had driven him into solitude, of the rope that had nearly ended his life. The past would always be there, but perhaps it didn't have to define the future. "Together," he agreed, "if that's what you want." She smiled then, a rare, full smile that transformed her serious face. "The Dene have a saying, 'Walk in beauty.' It means to live in harmony with the world and yourself." She touched his arm lightly. "Perhaps it is time for both of us to learn this path." As they descended to join the others, Jake felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Not just the satisfaction of justice served or vengeance fulfilled, but the promise of a new beginning. In the wilderness that had once been his refuge from humanity, he had found a reason to rejoin it.